In this video, I will walk you through the histology slides for the digestive lab, and we are starting with the liver. For the liver, we can think of it as several units came together. Each unit is called lobule. So each one of these structures is a lobule. Now, for this lab, what you need to do, look at the image and understand where are the lobules. Then you will zoom in to one of them. Now, what you need to know for the lab, one thing is something called the central vein. So this is the central vein here. This is another central vein. There is a third central vein, and so on. Each one of these lobules has a central vein. Here is a big one. So this is one thing that you need to know for this lab. The other thing that you need to know for the liver slide is the hepatocytes. And simply you will zoom in and you will see the hepatocytes. These are the liver cell. Each one of them is a liver cell. And here again, the central vein. If I zoom out, we said this is the lobule, another central vein, central vein, central vein, central vein, central vein, and so on. The triad is this one, which is something you don't need to know for the lab, but you need to know in general. So this is the triad in the liver. The next slide is the pancreas. And for the pancreas, it's something that you already saw. What you need to recognize is two things. The pancreatic islets, and these pancreatic islets, we said these are responsible for producing insulin and glucagon to increase or decrease blood sugar. This is another pancreatic islet. So this is one thing that you need to recognize. The other thing is the acinar cells. So each one of these group of cells is, so each cell is an acinar cell, and these acinar cells are sitting together in something called acne, and these are exocrine glands. These are the ones responsible for producing the digestive enzymes from the pancreas. The third thing you need to know is the stomach. And for the stomach, we can go in general and talk about, and for the stomach, I will show you first the layers of the alimentary canal. So here we have the mucosa, here we have the submucosa, and remember in the stomach we have three layers of muscles. Here there should be the oblique, then we have the circular, and lastly we will have the longitudinal, and above it we will have the serosa. So the mucosa is 1, the submucosa is 2, the muscularis layer is 3, and the serosa 4. So these are the 4 layers of the walls of the stomach. Now, for the stomach, what you need to know is the gastric pit, or to find the gastric pit. And technically, each one of these is a gastric pit. That will take us to a gastric gland. So we can think this is the gastric gland, and here this is the gastric pit. Same thing, this is gastric pit leading to a gastric gland, and so on. So this is the area that you need to zoom in and find these gastric pits. Now, one thing I want to show you here is this layer, the superficial layer of the mucosa. Now, these are special cells, epithelial cells, that are responsible for producing mucus. And we understand that here it will be the chyme, which is made basically of mainly HCl plus the food. And we understand that HCl is extremely acidic. We are talking about pH of 1 to 2. So if this pH comes to these cells, it will destroy them. So we need kind of protection. So these cells are producing mucus, and this mucus will cover the lumen of the stomach in order to prevent the pH from going inside. Usually the mucus is a little bit alkaline. We're talking about pH of 7. Technically it's not alkaline, it's more of neutral. But pH 7 and with pH of 1 or 2, this will bring the gastric juice in this area to around maybe 5, which these cells are capable of handling. So the idea of the mucus here is to protect against the pH of the stomach. Next slide is the small intestine. And with the small intestine, again, we will have the same pattern. So here we have the mucosa. So all of this and above is the mucosa. Then we have good layer of submucosa. We have the muscularis, and we have the serosa. Now for the small intestine, you can see there are these patterns or these folds. These are called intestinal folds, or sometimes they call them circular folds or intestinal folds. The idea of them is to increase the surface of the intestine. So instead of having a flat surface, the food will have only this area to come in contact with. Now we will have more area, so the food can come in contact with all of these surfaces. This will enhance absorption of nutrients. So this is one adaptation of the small intestine. I will zoom in to see more adaptations. One feature of the small intestine is the villi. These are finger-like extensions in the mucosa layer. So as you can see, we have a villi, and you can see that the surface goes up and down, So these villi are also to increase the surface contact with food. So there is more absorption of nutrient from the small intestine. So this is one thing that you need to understand, and this is how you recognize that this slide is from small intestine, by looking at these villi. Now the villi, some of the villis we can think of them are inverted, like here for example, or here. These are called the crypts. These will contain cells that would help in absorption, and these will contain stem cells. This will contain also stem cells responsible for increasing the production, or responsible for the regeneration of these epithelial cells. Also here we will have cells that produce some hormones, digestive hormones. So all of these cells, we can find them in these crypts. So this is another thing that you need to recognize. If we zoom in more and look at the surface of these villi, we will see here that there is epithelial cells, and these epithelial cells, if you remember from AB1, these are simple columnar cells. Now the surface of these cells, like this area, if you remember, the simple columnar cells, like tall cells, okay, with their nucleus a little bit down, but importantly on their surface they have also extensions. These extensions are called microvilli, also to increase the surface contact of these cells, so the food can go inside between these microvilli and being absorbed toward the cells. So this is the microvilli in all of them. This dark line above the surface of these cells is the microvilli. Now this usually is called the brush border, and there are some enzymes, we'll see that later, there are enzymes produced from there. So these are called the brush border enzymes. Okay, so just to remember the term. However, the thing that you need to look into this area are these cells, the expanded cells or the expanded cells. And you can see we have plenty of them. These are called goblet cells, and these cells, their main function is to produce a mucus. So these goblet cells, like here, are to produce a mucus. So also here in this area, like between the villi, this is all filled with the mucus. And the mucus in this case serves two purposes: facilitate absorption and also facilitate movement. So two main functions of a mucus in the small intestine. So this is the small intestine. Then the last one is the large intestine. And again, with the large intestine, you'll see the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and the serosa. If we zoom into large intestine, on the mucosa, we will see similar structures to the small intestine, but here we don't call these structures villi because they are not extended above the surface. Okay, so here the surface is like almost the same level, and this is a mark for the large intestine. Now the other mark is, so if we zoom even more into these structures, we will see a lot of these cells. All of these are goblet cells. So with the large intestine, you will have a lot of goblet cells. So all of these are goblet cells. And these also goblet cells produce mucus. However, mucus here has a different function. Here it's going, since we are talking about the large intestine, so we are dealing now with wastes of the digestion. So that waste needs to be covered with the mucus in order to facilitate later its defecation. So the mucus would cover the surface of these wastes, kind of smoothen their surface so they can easily slide along the large intestine and later facilitate the defecation. So this is the large intestine, and this concludes this video. If you have any question, please let me know, or you can post it in the forum.